Oops. Hey Ed, how you doing?
I'm good, Andy. How are
Hey,
things?
thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Glad to have you here.
Just
Where are you?
I am in Tacoma, Washington,
Oh yeah,
the
I've been
West
there.
Coast. Yeah,
Yeah.
whereabouts are you at?
I'm in North Carolina,
Oh, awesome.
Winston-Salem.
I have not
Winston-Salem.
been to North Carolina yet. It's on my list of places to get to.
It's a good place. It's I consider it the California of the East.
Okay. I've heard really good things about the beaches there, and I know some people from that area that have moved here that have always just been the kindest people and
Well,
said good
it's
things.
very diverse, and
Okay.
geographically, we got mountains and we got ocean, just
Mm-hmm.
like California.
Yeah.
Um, Politically, it's more diverse.
Yeah, that's always nice.
It's kind of right down the middle. There's kind of equal Republican, Democrat here.
Yeah, that's hard to find anymore. Everything gets so, so divisive lately. I'm like, can we just I always consider myself pretty middle of the road, and sometimes I feel a little more one way and a little more another, depending on the issue. And I just, yeah.
Yeah, it's and the rural North Carolina is very strong.
Hmm.
Cities are strengthening, but they're
Okay.
they have their challenges too. So it's a
Hmm.
good place to live, and I've lived in other places, and it's good to. I came back during COVID. Came back here from.
Okay.
I was living in Wyoming, and I moved back here.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, it's been good. I'm trying to remember who introduced us.
I believe Megan did. Megan Miller.
Okay,
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure it was. Yeah.
yeah, good old Megan.
Yeah,
She's great.
she's
I
awesome.
I enjoyed hearing her speak at this what is it, 360-degree master business master
Oh, yeah.
thing in August. I was one of the
Yeah,
speakers,
I was on that too. I forgot. I remember seeing you there now that you mentioned that.
and then I had her on the podcast. I guess a month or so ago. So yeah, if
Okay.
I enjoyed getting to know her, and yeah, I mean, she's got a great little niche there in
Hmm.
you know, trying to help particularly people who are Spanish speakers to speak English, and I guess people who are speakers to learn to speak Spanish. So that's a nice niche to be in.
Yeah, it is. I I've recommended her to people to follow and watch her stuff, especially if they're in like the construction industry or places where they're interested in that. Uh yeah, and even not even trying to learn Spanish myself, just because I've got enough other things on my plate. I I still enjoy the tips she puts out. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's good to know. It's fun. I like learning stuff, even if it's not something that's uh,
Well, I'm
right in
sure
the
she'll
thing
be
I'm
watching
seeking.
this. So hello, Megan. I hope you're doing well.
Hey,
So.
Megan. Yeah, love Megan.
So Andy, what is it that tell us something about what you do and maybe how you found yourself doing that.
Oh, I could talk for hours about that. So I'll be concise as I can here.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, my message and brand is own your awkward, and I bring that into speaking and coaching. But my whole premise is that we all have something we feel a little quirky or insecure or different about when we
Yeah.
walk into a room.
Yeah.
And we tend to want to shy away from that thing, yet that's one thing. It's usually the thing that people love the most about us. And when we learn to lean into it, it actually is the key to our most successful life, our happiest life, and it's really our superpower when we can learn to say, not even saying even though I have this thing, but because I have this thing, this is what makes me really powerful in what I'm doing. I do that as a speaker and a coach. I have a podcast where I ask people what their awkward thing is, and I've written a couple books that support my message around reframing the way we think and leaning into being our best selves. But in a nutshell, that's everything I do. I had been in a corporate life in leadership for years. Never really called it coaching. Always called it managing and leading. And when was in between jobs, and really thought, I've always wanted to get into being a writer and a speaker. I always wanted to author a book, and I had never done that. And I thought, this is a sign. It's now or never. I'm not really satisfied with the career I was in a lot of ways. It was rewarding financially, but it wasn't hitting that passion I was trying to fulfill. And I was in the middle of a divorce and thought, why not add one more thing to my plate? It's now or never. Let's do it. So I started focusing on the speaking and writing. And then after about a year of really pushing the speaking and having some gigs, I had people approaching me and asking, "How come you're not coaching? You're really good at helping people through things. Why aren't you doing one-on-one coaching?" So I started layering that in and went and got certified as a life coach and added that into what I do. And most of my clients tend to be either people who are making a big change in their life or entrepreneurs, small business owners who really I enjoy and love the marketing and figuring out logistics and solving problems. So.
What is it that you find kind of the standard thing that people say about being awkward? Is there
Oh,
anything that's kind of consistent across the spectrum of people you've worked with?
well, the one thing that I have found, because I've worked with several people and I've interviewed hundreds of people about what their awkward is over the last 10 years. And one thing that I continually hear is that they allowed themselves to hold themselves back because of what they perceived as awkward.
Yeah.
Yet as soon as they were able to share it and own it and really step into it fully, and it's kind of everyone has kind of hit a breaking point at some point in their life where they say, I can't hide this anymore. I'm not going to feel bad about this anymore. I'm going to stop viewing it the same way. When they hit that point of change, all of a sudden it's like stress is just melts away and they go, wow, why didn't I know this sooner? Life just got so much easier and I'm happier without trying so hard.
Yeah. 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 I get that. Um, I was thinking about this before we came on. What is my awkward?
Hmm.
And I wonder if I've suppressed that for one. I mean, I think,
Oh, sure.
yeah, I probably have. Um, but I see it as fitting into situations where um, it demands a certain very narrow field of expertise. Like
Mm,
most corporate jobs are very kind of narrowly shaped, and I never fit into
right.
any of those. I'm kind of a big
Hmm.
picture person, and so I
Right.
always felt like I was on the outside. So my compensation for that was I'm going to learn how to talk to people and to introduce
Okay.
myself to people and to initiate conversations. And I mean, I had to start doing this, a long time ago because, I was a fish out of water in every pool that ever encountered. And that's what led to the Eddie Network podcast because this is what I'm
Okay.
doing. And what I'm finding, Andy, is that um, many of the guests are expressing not in the language you're using, but the spirit of what you're speaking to when they come and
Right.
talk with me here, and it's
Okay.
quite interesting.
Yeah, and one of the things I have found is there's a lot of talk about vulnerability and authenticity, which I'm not saying are bad things,
Right?
but sometimes those words are a little intimidating and they sound like they're so deep and I need to do a weekend
Yes.
retreat to figure out, open up all my scars and really think how am I going to show up? Who am I going to be? And that's essentially what we're getting to. However, sometimes just saying, what's your quirky thing you feel funny about? It's a little bit of a relief of, oh, you know what? I spilled mustard on my shirt at lunch today. I'm feeling funny about that right now. Because it can be as simple as sometimes it's in the moment, and sometimes
Yes.
it is a deeper, man, I've always had an accent different than everybody, or I've always talked slower or too fast, whatever the thing is. And the other point to remember is that someone else out there has the opposite issue as you and it's typically envious. If you're the biggest person in the room, the smallest person in the room is going, man, I wish I would get noticed like that person. And you're going, look at that person who's a lot smaller over there. I wish I could just blend in and not have everybody notice me and say, man, what's the weather like up there? Whatever the thing is. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I figured that they would you walk in, say, to a business after hours event, and
Hmm.
you got a crowd there, and you're not going to know many of the people, maybe,
Right.
and instead of going to where there's a crowd of three or four people talking to each other, go to that person is standing over against the wall with his face to the wall. He's scared to
Right.
engage. You go talk to them and you bring them in, and then you introduce them to someone else, and all of a sudden you've changed the dynamic of the room.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you can make it more about, can I introduce you to somebody? It actually makes it easier because your mission shifts. I've been in that situation, and one of the things that on both the giving and receiving end of that, and I have noticed, I did not know this about myself until I started doing the work I do now, because I've always been very extroverted, kind of the
Hmm.
prankster in the family, the getting the attention as the youngest kid, and I always thought that that meant I wasn't shy and I was very extroverted. But I found that as soon as the attention is directly on me, or I'm in those situations where I have to go approach somebody, I thought, oh, yes, I'm very entertaining, and yes, I'm very extroverted, but in certain situations, I'm very shy, and I have to get past that. And that's something I didn't realize until the last few years that that was something that I needed to own.
So that would mean maybe that there are people who are extroverts but who do not um, seek out status
Mm,
or
okay.
celebrity attention. They're not
Mhm.
interested in being the focal point, but they are interested in being engaged with people.
That makes that is I'm trying to do some math in my head because I do stand-up comedy and speaking. I do a lot of things that say I'm seeking that,
Yeah.
yet I really want to do those things more for what it gives to the people in the audience than
Yes. Yes.
the actual attention. And it can be exciting sometimes where you're like, oh wow, look at this. I got recognized for one thing or another. But as soon as it's one-on-one and people are just going, oh wow, this really meant something, I'm like, okay, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna start blushing and getting embarrassed. And um yeah.
Are you
But
still doing stand up?
yes, I am. I do it. It's a really good tie-in with my motivational speaking. So my stand-up is more of an outlet and a hobby. I'll do that here and there. I don't push it as hard, but I'll do a show. Like next month, I have two shows. I had a show last night that I self-produce, and then sometimes I'll go a couple months without a show. Whereas, I used to do it 3 or 4 times a week, but I was like, this is getting to be too much. I really need to focus on the speaking side. So
So, what kind of crowd was it last night?
it was great. We had about 50 people. I rent a theater, and when I started my business, I did a rideshare driving to help pay the bills. I was in the middle of a divorce, had to get going, was between jobs, and you don't start getting the gigs immediately. So I did about 5,000 rideshare drives over 3 years. Then I wrote a book about what happened in the car, and it's based in the town that I live in here in Tacoma. And now I do a one-man show where I tell the stories from the book and I use the audience members' names in the stories. So it was a lot of fun. We had a great time. There was uh, some people who've been to the show 2 or 3 times. There's people who, and that's always fun. It's reassuring when people come back, like, oh, I didn't bore you the first time. Some people that I didn't know who either just saw the flyer or heard about it from the theater or friends brought them. So there was just this different mix of, I guess, validation that, oh, this was a good thing that, some strangers came, some people came again, some friends came who hadn't been before. So it was a great time. I left feeling really good about it.
I'm tempted to ask you to give us a little example of how your stand-up goes. Can you
Oh
do that?
gosh.
Or
Well,
is it or is it context? Is it really context oriented where need to be standing up in front of a crowd?
some can be, but it just depends because, like for example, I open with talking about how I, had to make these life changes. I had been married for 20 years, and after being married for 20 years, I found out that the whole time we were married, my wife was sleeping with a gay guy. And if you do the math, it turns out it was me. And so
Oh,
that's one of my
oh,
opening
oh, that's
jokes. And then
good.
yeah. So that's some of it is, but a lot of it is situational or playing on what's going on in the room.
Self-deprecating humor in some
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, a lot of self-deprecating. I I try to make fun of situations or myself and not make fun of other people. You know, there's the occasional if I'm punching up, I'll do that when I can, when it fits the storyline, but I try to make sure it's not targeting or attacking. I don't really like. I've done some roast shows where I'm roasting comedians are roasting each other, but you have some set guidelines around that. People know what they're getting into. But even those I just don't really like doing. It's not my style that much.
You're too kind a person.
Maybe. I that's a nice compliment. I just it's hard to get into some of the that stuff, but
So did what was it that first triggered this idea that you wanted to focus on awkwardness in people?
well, I tell you, it really developed over through a couple things. When I first was getting started with taking writing to the next level, I'd been doing a lot of blogging on through LinkedIn initially, and I was still married, and all of my writing were very safe topics, things about how to develop your career, have a good LinkedIn profile and to-do list for your day, things like that. Things that were helpful, and I got great feedback from my blogs I was putting out there, but nothing really overly personal. And I got to a point I was working on a book, and it was going to be called. I finished other books, but I still haven't finished this book because that's just how it goes when you're an author. You have a million started
Well, I know.
projects. Yeah, yeah, you know how this goes. But the book was going to be about all the things that you don't want to have to talk about in an interview, such as having a gap on your resume, not having a college degree, having been laid off or fired, spilling a cup of coffee in the middle of an interview, how to recover from that. All things that I have done myself or had to deal with. And I was
Yes.
going to call the book The Awkward Interview. And so
Ah,
so I started kind of leaning into that premise from that standpoint, not at all planning to get into your awkward thing and what that might have to do with your personal development. Had no desire to be a coach at that point. Didn't give myself credit for the fact I'd been coaching people for 20 years at this point. And I had actually bought the website awkwardcareer.com to be an umbrella for the book because I thought, well, if I do other books, maybe I'll tie into the awkward theme, but talk about awkward dynamics at work. And that from there developed into when I started my podcast, I leaned into the name Own Your Awkward based on some conversations with people. And it just kind of developed from that. And then I found how much it resonated with people and how much it related to my own story and how easy it was to bring that to light because you just when I'll be wearing my merch around town and I'll have my Own Your Awkward shirt or jacket on and constantly people are like, "Oh my gosh, what is that? I love that. Like, tell me more." And they don't even know anything about what it is or what's behind it, but just those three words tell people a really simple message for life.
I'm trying to remember which of the TV talk show hosts does it, but one of them does a thing at the end of the show where he gives the guests an opportunity to have an awkward pause.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
I don't think I'm blanking on his name. He's a Scottish actor who did a talk show for about 10 years. He's off
Okay.
now he's got a podcast, but
Hmm.
it may come to me before we're done. But yeah,
Yeah.
he gives them gives the guest to finish the interview with either playing a harmonica
Okay.
or or doing an awkward pause where they just they're
Mm,
not doing anything, and then
right.
there's a third one that they do, and it's really funny. Craig Craig something. It'll come to me.
Mm,
The last name will
yeah.
come to me. But
Okay. If not, I'll Google it afterwards.
yeah, yeah. But that's I think a lot of people feel this way, and
Hmm.
but they feel also awkward in in acknowledging it, and
Right.
excuse me, and I find that is particularly true between generations.
Hmm.
Older people like me have a hard time talking to young people, and young people feel a little bit intimidated about talking to older people, and that
Right.
awkwardness makes it more difficult for us to communicate. So I'm thinking that it's not simply my awkwardness about feeling awkward by myself. It's also the awkwardness that happens socially that we need to
Right.
somehow deal with. And I
Yeah.
wonder how you address that sort of thing.
Well, one thing that I'm glad you brought that up, especially around communication, because one thing that I have really found is that that awkward dynamic, as much as it presents itself through communication, but the real problem is it gets in the way of trust and connection. So
Yes.
if we feel like something's awkward, and I worry like Ed's kind of shying away from talking to me, he must not like me. He must be trying to hide something from me. These are the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the dynamic. And then we take actions or don't take actions based on that belief that we've created in our head around the situation. And yet I find that the best solution is to call it out in the moment and say, just once you put it on the table, you say, this feels awkward and I don't know why. Or I feel awkward in the situation because I don't know these things you kids are talking about these days. I don't get it. And if you can do it in a way that is not putting someone down, but out of curiosity and questioning,
Yeah.
then we have the opportunity for connection and for trust to grow.
I totally agree with you because I have found I intentionally seek out, particularly Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, to talk to when I'm in a
Hmm.
social environment. And there's some kids there. I'm gonna go seek them out because I'm curious
Yeah.
about them, and
Yeah.
and and I have to reassure them that I have no ill intent. I'm
Right.
not coming to judge them, which they get a
Hmm.
lot of judgment from
Right.
older people. I'm not going to sit in judgment. I really want to know what you think because I think you have something to contribute, something that's worth hearing.
Right. And that works both ways because there's a lot they can learn from someone who's lived a longer life than them. There's a lot that they might not know it yet. They might not. And sometimes being able to step into a situation with enough curiosity to not even have a list of questions, but to be able to say, I don't know what to ask here, but I know I want to learn.
Yeah.
And that's a different level of exploration. I know there's moments where I've been trained on things, and at the end, someone says, "Do you have any questions?" And I'm going, I have so many questions, but I can't put them to words right now because I don't even know where to start. And then it comes to, if sometimes the way depending on the situation and how technical it is, I'm able to say, what questions did you have when you got started? Or what questions would you have if you were in my shoes? And that kind of gives me a workaround. Yeah, sometimes with someone like a difference in generations or I also see this in a difference in the different trades or skills that people have.
Yeah.
This can show up a lot of times within a company where you have one department fully focused on operations or productions or manufacturing, and a completely different culture of the organization in the accounting and admin and customer service
True.
because they're having completely different experiences within their expertise. That can be hard for people to talk to. And so to then be able to bring some questions to the table that are, man, how do you see our department? Or what is it that you think we do or don't do? And then be able to go, oh, actually, this is the case. I've had that happen where I was just talking with someone about this a couple days ago, where, you meet people where they're at in your life. And unfortunately, that's the way we frame our understanding of who they are or what experiences they've had. And yet we don't know this person that we see in a cafe might have fought a war, might have invented something, might have written a book, and we don't know until we start having that conversation. And so then we have to think about what are the most open-ended questions that aren't, what do you do for work? But, what's the coolest experience you've had in your life? What are you
Yeah.
most excited to still try? Things
Yeah.
like that we can find out where we're going to go from there.
I've had some awkward encounters with people, and and I don't know if I'm responsible for the awkwardness, but I was responsible for resolving it. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
because I'm just going to talk to people. And I was in London last fall, a year ago, and
Mm.
I'm just walking down the street. I've been to the Apple store because I'd forgotten my my connections that I needed,
Oh, right.
and this guy beckons me over, and he's this man on the street with he had a young girl with him, and they were filming, and they wanted to interview me, and they wanted to
Okay.
interview me about male cologne,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
and I said to them, well, I've never used anything like this. Maybe I should. Tell me why. I mean,
Uh-huh.
and they were obviously selling a particular type of cologne, and they let me smell it. I could hardly smell it. I mean, it was not very strong. And I said, I'm enjoying this. Says, but this is I do this as a podcast. I do a podcast where I interview. Why
Mhm.
don't I interview you two, and and we'll and maybe we'll put it on my podcast.
Uh-huh.
And they kind of looked at each other and they said, okay. And so we talked for about 5 minutes, and they filmed it, but they never sent it to me. It's never got
Okay.
published.
Uh-oh.
But it was such an interesting and fun encounter with them. Now he was like
Yeah.
in his late 20s, and she was only 20 years old, and she had an ability to express herself. She was not
Mhm.
awkward in the least, and
Okay.
but you see those kinds of encounters, I think, allow whatever awkwardness that we may feel to kind of
Right.
dissipate, and we can gain some sense of. So, so I'm searching for the word. What is the opposite of awkward?
That's a really good question. And that's something that I should know. Like, I mean, the word comfort or ease comes to mind,
Yeah,
but yeah, because awkward is when things just feel disconnected or disjointed and out of alignment. And so
right,
sometimes
right.
I feel like being in alignment or comfortable um, are the terms that come to mind. And maybe it could be that it depends on the source of the awkward on what that opposite word is.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Andy, I've had a lot of these encounters with people where it became very awkward for a host of reasons, and I had one this summer where I'm just sitting at a bar and I'm having dinner, and this young woman comes down and sits next to me, and I'm thinking everybody I meet is is a possibility of being on the podcast. So I
Okay.
begin to
Yeah.
talk to her as if, okay, I'm going to see if she's got something to say, and I'm going to invite her on the podcast.
Hmm.
That's the way I approach it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, she starts giving me this very dark story about her marriage. And the next
Mm.
thing I know, she's inviting me to spend the night with her. And I'm
Oh.
thinking, oh my, I mean, talk about being awkward. And what's interesting is that the bar staff is watching this go on. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
I'm in the middle of this dramatic situation, and I just say, well, I'm very complimented by you want to do that, and but you're married, and I won't do that. So it's
Right. Yeah.
but so I think this is for your clients, is that um, you're not going to overcome this awkwardness with one experience. You have
Uh,
to build on
Not
that,
at all.
and you kind
Exactly.
of have to say, the devil may care. I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to learn from it.
Definitely. And it's to me, I relate it a lot to facing your fears. Once you face your biggest fear or have that awkward thing come to light where you now have conquered it and you own it and you love it,
Yeah,
something new rises to the top. I'll say like, "Oh, I faced this fear. Now I can handle that. Now you have the next fear is now your newest fear." And so it is always something that you are working and growing and leaning into, and new things can always show up. Things happen where, you'll see a news article and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know I needed to be worried about a part of an airplane falling off." Like whatever that thing is, where you're going, "That was never a fear of mine. Now that's on
no,
the
it
list."
is.
And that's how that is with awkward things where you go, until you've had the situation come up or experienced a conversation or been in a place where something new happens, you go, oh, yeah, I didn't see that one coming. And so now maybe it was awkward because I didn't know it was a possibility, but I have the chance to be prepared for it next time.
So are most of your clients, most of the people you work with individuals, or are you doing work with organizations, with teams, and other kinds of groups?
I'll do both. When I work mostly with organizations, I'll do employee development. We'll do
Uh-huh.
a series of workshops and in engagement with their employees to really help grow their soft skills, communication, and leadership. I found that actually there was a study done where they found that 56% of us don't feel like we can show up fully to work. We have to hide part of who we are. And when we look at that number, we think that's more than half the workforce. And what percentage of energy are they putting into concentrating on how they're supposed to be when they show up or hiding that? And that means they're not able to contribute fully. They're probably feeling like they're putting in 110% of their energy, and yet they're only, if 30% of their focus is how am I going to be today? How am I supposed to show up? How's this going to affect everything? Then that means that they're only really able to give that 70%. So I work on helping organizations create a dynamic and an environment where we can have those conversations around, oh, this is awkward. You know what? We're coming from different places on this. Let's have the conversation so we can move forward. And then I would say about a third of my work is one-on-one. I do group coaching, one-on-one coaching on the coaching side of my business, but about a third of it is focused on that, and about two-thirds is more um, corporate, either keynotes and workshops at conferences or companies that hire me to come in.
Is there a particular type of company that you tend to have found is a good place for you to work?
The place that I have done the most had the most success has been with companies where like things like healthcare, social worker, caregivers,
Yeah.
um, the type of companies where the employees are in a very giving role
Huh.
and out in the community have tended to be the companies that have related the most with my work because they face a lot of burnout, they're a lot of times working with people from different cultures and different backgrounds, and they're working with the public. So those have been uh, when I first got started, I was kind of surprised. I had 4 or 5 different healthcare gigs in a row that were not at all related. It wasn't a recommendation because someone knew someone else in the field. They just happened to have all been the same industry. And I thought, huh, there's something there that apparently this is the group that needs my message, at least right now.
So are we talking, say, like a PA for a physician who is meeting a potential patient for the first time, and there's an awkwardness because, well, they don't know who the patient is, they don't know what the patient knows, they don't know what the patient's issues are, and so they feel awkward um, in that setting. Is that something like you see?
There can be some of that, and there's also when you get in, especially fields like healthcare, there's legalities around what you can say
Oh,
and ask,
oh,
and
yeah.
so it even adds an extra dynamic. Like you can't be as upfront about, oh, I like this about you, or I noticed this. Tell me this. You have to be careful about how you ask the questions, but even just some in those situations, calling out. I'm only allowed to ask certain things because then if someone, we've all been to that doctor where we feel like there's this really cold, not getting to know you. But even if they were able to say, these are the parameters around which I'm allowed to work, it doesn't mean I'm not curious to get to know you, but you have to be the one sharing. I can't interview you outside of how it relates to
Yeah.
your health.
I, I
So
went
that, yeah.
I went to a doctor last year. I had a number of health issues last year. Um, and I was treated initially very condescendingly
Mm,
until I began
mm-hmm,
to describe my situation. And I described
mm.
it in great detail, and it changed their approach to me.
Oh,
So
wow.
if I had felt awkward or intimidated by
Mm-hmm.
talking to the physician, I might never have said what he needed to hear from me, so he could actually know what my situation was.
Right. Yeah, and that's where it can really hold us back if we feel like because that's what one of the things we tend to do is we can clam up or protect information when we don't feel like it's going to be received or it's a safe place to share. So we need to both on the sharing side, we need to be able to push past that, and on the receiving side, we need to be able to recognize someone might not be sharing because of a dynamic that's in the way. So how do we remove that and call it out? And that's where just having that conversation, if like to come back to that thing of as simple as if you spill on your shirt and you're being kind of guarded in a conversation, or maybe you're kind of turning away a little bit, and then Ed's over here feeling like, man, Andy's really not connecting with me. Yet if I were to say, Ed, I'm feeling so self-conscious because I got a street hot dog and it spilled right on me, and you can't unsee it. It's right there. I know you see it, but it's just bugging me. Now you go, oh, it's not about me. It's not about he's trying to hide something from me other than he wishes he didn't have mustard all down the front of his shirt. And yet now all of a sudden we can laugh about it and move on. And now we have a common experience in that moment that we can build on.
What do you feel? I mean, we're in a time of significant change going on in the world. And do you feel how much do you feel? Gosh, I'm say how do I want to ask this question? What is it that people feel in terms of all the change and the chaos that's going on in the world that that makes them feel awkward about being able to say make changes in their life so that they can get into a better situation? Does is it is there something which makes them feel like they're inadequate for the task of making changes that would be beneficial to them?
I think that can be. I think one of the things we need to remember is that we were not ever built to know in any given second of the day what is happening in every single other part of the world within a split second. So we have so much more access to knowledge that
Yeah,
can be very powerful, but that can really hold us back. When we all know the phrase comparison is the thief of joy. And keeping up with the Joneses used to be about the people that were in the suburb right next, right around the corner from us that we would drive by and we'd get to our driveway and think, oh man, I don't have the same car or I don't have this, whatever. I don't have, the boat in the driveway that the house three doors down does. Imagine magnifying that now to the billions of people on the planet that we can see any moment we open our phone that's with us all day long. We see a comparison and it takes a lot of concerted effort to step out of that space and not be comparing ourselves. And both on the comparison side, but also on the amount of negativity and sad stories and bad things that are going on in the world. There are a lot of heartbreaking stories about people going through awful things, which my heart goes out to them for, but I
yeah.
also know I can only be effective with the people in my own community. And I can only make effective change and be affected by the people that I encounter in person in my day. So we need to be able to be aware of what's going on in the world without bringing all of the emotion and comparison into our lives. And that takes a lot of work. And I mean, I know that I find myself going, "Oh, this happened somewhere else." It's like, well, did I still walk out the door and smile at a stranger today? Did someone still treat me well today? In the amount of things that I'm going through in my day within my sphere of influence, is there something that was positive and was there something that was negative that I could help make better? And the more we can focus on the things that are during the errands that we're running, with the people that we're hanging out with the places that we work, the more we can put all of our energy as much as possible into that, with just a little bit of awareness of what's going on outside of that space, then I think that really helps us have a healthier approach and be less overwhelmed because it's overwhelming when you think, oh man, I just think about like Chicken Little that the sky is falling. Like you're trying to catch everything and put a fix and make sure everyone has awareness around everything everywhere. And on the flip side, there are people who are passionate about a cause because that cause very much affected their life. I think about like the bumper sticker phenomenon of you'll see a bumper sticker on someone's car that's raise funding for a certain disease or support, you know, children in a certain area because that person was affected by that. So they are an advocate in their voice and they're bringing awareness to it. And that's important and that's valid and that is what we should do. But I can't put every bumper sticker on my car for every cause that's ever been there. And I'm going to put the sticker on my car for the thing that has most affected my life or that has had the biggest impact. So we need the voices, but we need to not feel like we have to be the voice for everything.
So maybe part of what we do to relieve ourselves of this fear of awkwardness is to be able to say no to things that cause it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Be able to step out of it and say, okay, um,
Do
it's
you have
and
a like a little program, a little say, this you can do take these steps in the morning, or you're walking into a meeting here, you do. How do you help people? I mean, you presented this idea, and I totally with you, but how do people move from feeling awkward to not feeling awkward? What is that? What do those steps look like?
yeah, I have a set of questions I walk people through.
Uh-huh.
My latest book is called Own Your Awkward Thoughts and it helps you reframe the way you think. But I
Yeah.
have six main questions in this book that are all about no matter how you're feeling in a situation, these are designed to help you step back and shift into the direction that you want to go. One of those questions, for example, is what is a different ending that I could tell myself other than the story I'm telling myself in right now in my head? So, we all think we know where this story is going to go, but what's a different ending I could write to this story?
Yeah.
And the goal is just to open our minds up to realize there are other possibilities. We don't have to know what the answer is, but we have to believe that there are other possibilities that are just as likely as the one that we are creating in the scenario in our head. Another one of those questions is, what would I tell my best friend or the younger version of myself in this scenario? Because many times we are having really negative conversations with ourselves and sometimes being bullies to ourselves and talking to ourselves the way we wouldn't talk to a stranger or someone that we didn't even like. And yet we wouldn't tell our friends the same things we're saying in our own head. So, how do we shift that dynamic? What would I tell someone else right now?
That's a good idea. That's really good. And so what have you what have you learned from your clients? Uh, that surprised you, that
Mm.
um, that kind of elevated who you are, who the value of what you're doing, that elevated your sense of what you're doing as something of worth. But your clients or the people that or the companies that you work with have said things to you that say this is really important, and it has taken you to another place and relieved maybe some more awkwardness that maybe you would have had.
Oh, that's such a great question. One thing that I have found when we are telling our story or working in a certain area, and
Hmm.
this can apply, you don't have to be getting on stage as a speaker or writing books for this to apply. This can be with whatever your hobby or passion is. The more you do it, you become so familiar with it that it kind of lessens the impact in your own head. So sometimes I've had times where I get on stage and I think, oh man, I've told these same anecdotes or stories for years now. People are bored of these, but I forget it's the first time the people in the room have heard that story or heard that message or even been introduced to the idea of owning your awkward. So I had a conference a couple of years ago and I gave a keynote and afterwards I was going to be giving a breakout session and it was going to be the breakout session was going to be about an hour later and I remember kind of getting in my head around at the end of the keynote just going, well, I just bored those people for an hour. Like there's no way they're going to come to my workshop. And I went to the workshop room and I start setting stuff up, and they had a little break beforehand. So there were a couple jackets on chairs. People had thrown their jackets on because they had dropped them off before the break. And I thought, okay, at least a couple people will be here. And then I go back to my table in the hallway to gather some stuff, and I come back in, and there was about a third of the conference was in this room.
Wow.
There were people sitting on the floor and standing in the back, and I'm thinking it was like I almost had to step out in the hallway and just take a moment. I'm like, you still need to perform, you still need to put on it. Like I
They're
was
here
like,
for
oh,
me? Oh, wow.
right.
Yeah.
But in that moment, there were a couple of things where people afterwards had approached and shared moments of how it resonated. And one gal came up to me and said that she's like, this message resonated so much. She had a really strong accent, and she said, English is my second language, and it always makes me feel um, like I don't know if she used the word stupid or not as smart as everybody in the room
Right.
because I'm struggling because I'm translating in my head as I'm speaking, which is one of those things when we can't communicate with people. Sometimes there is that, is this an intelligence issue? But we forget this is someone who's so intelligent that they know how to speak sometimes two or three languages that that is not the case. It's they're having to do a lot more work in their head to have the conversation. And her friend said, "Are you kidding me? Your accent is what I love the most about you. It's what makes you unique and fun and charming." And it's like that right there. Like I want to bottle that conversation because that is exactly my point that the thing that we feel self-conscious about is actually what attracts people to us and what creates our style and the way we show up. And it was one of the times where I had a really tangible example of this what I have experienced because you start out with a mission and you say, okay, this is what I think makes sense. This is my experiences. But then you have that validation of, okay, in the moment, we just saw two people sharing their experience of the way one perceives themselves and the way another perceives them be completely different. And they knew each other well enough that it wasn't like they just met in the lobby and were like, "Oh no, I met." They worked together.
Wow. Okay, here's my last question. And this is a kind of a big global question. And I'm really kind of asking you to reflect back on all these years that you've been talking about this.
Hmm.
Do you feel hopefulness about the future because people, and I'm not asking you to say that, well, I'm doing a great job. No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking whether this sense of being able to overcome a sense of awkwardness or whatever that impediment to their life is, that you have a higher level hope today than you did in the past, and you see a hopefulness for the future. Does that make sense?
It does, and I would say I definitely have a good hope for the future, and it's not just because of the work I'm doing.
Right.
I feel that way because I see more conversations happening
Uh-huh.
across the board, and those conversations are more real. So whether it's about awkward or it's about, people figuring out how to make a recipe in their kitchen. We're just getting into things that are more everyday. How do we connect as humans? How do we live better? And how do we discuss things? And so I am as much divisiveness as we see in the world. I think we're actually having more conversations, and so that creates more visibility to the things that sometimes are less positive to have. But I think on the whole, we are having more conversations, we're having deeper conversations, and there's more access to information for people to help themselves grow individually, regardless of dynamics of how we're getting along with other people. So that gives me so much hope to know that, for me, it took me till I was 40 to be comfortable in my own skin. And I always say, if I can help somebody figure it out a year sooner, a decade sooner, 20 years sooner, then that's great. And I look at the generations growing up now, and they can look up any question they're struggling with without even having to get through the barrier of who do I feel comfortable asking this? I can just go on the internet, ask a question, and at least get some ideas. Now, maybe they're not always the best pointers, but all in
Right,
all,
right.
there's information.
That's great. Well, how do people find you if they want to connect with you, read your book or books, maybe come to a stand-up night that you're hosting, or bring you in to work with their company? How do people find you?
Well, I try to be as accessible as possible. I'm all over the internet. My website is awkwardcareer.com. You can also join, can't find me at Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, any of the social medias. It's either Awkward Career or Own Your Awkward. If you just type in Own Your Awkward or Andy Vargo, I typically pop right up, but I am happy to connect with people, answer questions. I love, just like you, I love having conversations with people and learning about people. So I'd love
Oh
to chat
yeah.
and connect and
Oh,
find out what your awkward thing is.
it's never boring. It's never boring. So,
Exactly.
well, thank you, Andy. It's been a pleasure to have you, and I hope we'll have a chance to talk again sometime in the future.
Definitely. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for watching. I hope this has given you inspiration to move beyond those things which are holding you back, that sense of awkwardness that makes you feel like I'm not good enough or whatever that may be. I hope that you will take the initiative and go try something, go talk to someone you don't know, go introduce yourself, do something to demonstrate that you can do more than what you imagine yourself able to do today. And I thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye bye.